This is now me talking to a startup founder. Do not give too much of your equity away. Feel free. Feel free to fire your angel. Feel free to say no to the money.
The two most difficult decisions you have to make as a startup founder is who is your co-founder?
Yes.
Who are you getting married to on this mission?
That's right.
And then the other marriage seems to be the investor.
C-suite executives, fabulous angels.
Interesting.
And more of them should be angels. But think about the skill sets of someone that's a CFO or CMO or CIO or COO. I mean, those are hugely transferable skills to startups. 3 of the funds that I'm an LP in all have a gender lens, meaning that they invest in companies that have at least one female founder. It is a fact that if you invest in a company that has at least one female founder, they will give you a higher return back on your, say, $1. It could be as high as 70 cents more on your $1 of investment if you've invested in a company that has at least one female founder versus you investing in a company that has all male. Impact and making money are not mutually exclusive. When I started to become an angel, it wasn't like I was intentionally impact focused. But one thing that's also interesting about investing in female founders is that typically their company has some sort of an impact.
Welcome to the Lucidity Insights podcast, The Perfect Pitch. This is where I sit down with the region's most active investors and we talk about the ins and outs of the startup fundraising journey. And of course, what makes a perfect pitch. Today, I am so excited to be sitting across from the first angel investor we've ever had on the show, and actually the first one we had on our wish list, Lucy Chow. Lucy, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Erica. Am I really your first angel?
You are our first angel.
I'm
super excited.
Okay.
So we sat down and talked about this a month ago, and I reached out of you from out of the blue. And I think people should know this, actually. The reason why you're at the top of our list was, not only are you a prolific angel investor, but a story I think that encapsulates that is that for literally 7, 8, 9 years, I have heard this. Do you know Lucy Chow? Do you know Lucy Chow? Do you know Lucy Chow? You should meet Lucy Chow. And at the time, as I told you when we met a month ago, I was like, now is the time for us to meet.
Right. It was meant to be now.
But I think that there was a couple of similarities there with both of us being Canadian.
Yep.
Both of us being Asian Canadian.
That's right. Right. Yeah.
Proud Asian Canadians. From the West Coast. You're from Vancouver.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm from Vancouver Island.
Yeah.
And of course that you're so active in this space, and also, I don't know if you'd call yourself a feminist, but clearly empower, someone all about women's empowerment.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And even the fact that I'm on your wonderful podcast, I'm all about elevating and giving space to women's voices. And a podcast does that, right?
I love that.
It's amplifying, right? Knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I know why you're here because I asked you, but let me introduce you to the audience.
Okay.
You have an incredible resume, but I've just cherry-picked the angel investing bits and pieces that I think everyone should know. So, Lucy, you're the Secretary General of the World Business Angels Investment Forum. What a mouthful.
And so there's 4 committees, and I'm specifically the Secretary General of the Global Women
Leadership Committee.
Yeah, correct.
You're also the Investment Committee Director for the WBAF Angel Investment Fund.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And also an investor with the Next Wave Impact Fund and the Founder Institute. You also sit on the steering committee of the 2022 Female Angels and is a limited partner with numerous funds globally. Wow.
Right.
So what screams out at me when I look at this is A, you're a big fan of angel investing, and
Yes.
B, you are a huge proponent for women to be angel investing.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how you got here, how you became an angel.
Sure.
I don't think that's a career choice you make out of college.
No, and honestly, it's and actually, I was just asked recently, what is the risk that more women should be taking financially but do not? And my answer to that is that they should really try, if they can, if they have the wherewithal, to allocate a portion of their disposable income to becoming an angel. And specifically investing in female founders. So, what happened with me was I have a banking background. I was in investment banking also, and it was someone I knew that said, "Listen, there's angel networks everywhere in North America. There's not really one for women angels specifically here, and on top of that, an angel network that's specifically focused on female founders." So that was kind of my first foray into becoming an angel. But at that juncture, when I was asked, and I was like, oh, hang on, wait a minute. I don't know anything about being an angel. I don't know that I'm the right person. And, and this is what I'm telling people now. But this is the whole point. We all can learn, right, how to become an angel. There are, now there's podcasts, there's YouTube, but you can actually go to pitches, right? We've got STEP coming up.
Yeah.
There's so much information out there, and there's fabulous angel networks that actually take you through a whole learning curve process of what it means to be an angel. What does it mean? How do you discern a good pitch from not good pitch? How do term sheets work? All the jargon that goes into, and is intimidating. And actually that makes me a little bit upset, because I feel like sometimes, and I'm not slagging off feces, I'm just saying, it's deliberately opaque. Right. Yeah. And I feel for the entrepreneurs, because it's the entrepreneurs that are like, all this terminology I have to navigate and understand and try to get funding for my company.
And to be honest, and we do want more transparency, because as a startup founder, you might not understand, and that's what we're finding, obviously, at Lucidity Insights. That's why we're focused on this fundraising process right now. Yeah. Hopefully, we'll extend into other areas where we can help entrepreneurs. But one of the reasons why we started this podcast, why we started the investor and database now, and now we're inviting angels onto it as well, is because startup founders keep coming to us, and they're completely clueless.
They are.
About how they just go, I think I need money. Sure. Who do I start with? And even what is the difference between raising with angels or friends and family versus institutional investor? And right now, for many first-time founders, all of this is clumped together. Yeah. And they just go, it's an investor that has money and they might give it to me. Right. And that's not how it works, is it?
No. I mean, there's different stages of the life cycle of your company. And obviously, the friends and family is usually the very first into your company, right? And yourself, right? Before you ask other people to invest in you, you have to be willing to do that yourself, right? Skin in the game. But also your people that know you the best, right? Your friends and family. Are they willing to invest in you? And then you approach angels. And honestly, the angel space is it's fraught with difficulty, because the chances of you making money is very slim. Because most 80% of companies fail, right, within their first few years. And if you're investing at early stage companies, you got to expect that a lot of them will fail. And that's why typically angel networks will say that as an angel, you should have a portfolio of a minimum of 10 companies. And then you can expect like I don't know, 6 or 7 to fail. Maybe 2 will break even, and then 1 you'll knock it out of the ballpark, and that's what you're looking for. That one that takes you right. That makes it all worthwhile.
Right. Okay, so let's strip this all back so that we can help everyone understand.
Sure.
Both from the angel perspective of getting more angels out there, getting more people that are like, hey, I have some disposable income and I would love to mentor and support some startups and maybe even put some money behind them to support. I think a lot of people are talking about how can we be of service once we get to a certain level in our careers and disposable income. I want to talk about it from that angle, but I also want to talk about it from the startup founder angle.
I love it.
You mentioned these stages of development and the first round coming from friends and family.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's the exact same thing we say, like VCs will say, well, if you haven't been able to raise funds from an investor locally, as in either an angel or someone in your country or city, then why would an international investor invest in you, right? And I feel the same logic is being applied here, where angel investors are taking a bigger risk, but they're saying, first, friends and family, and you yourself have to have some capital or, invest in there to show that you've been able to convince people that are nearest and dearest to you that you've got something here.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about when a startup is starting to approach angel investors. First of all, where do you find angels?
No, and this is the whole thing. So there are more and more angel networks. If we're just talking about MENA, you could totally look up, and then obviously through initiatives like yours, right? Hopefully it'll be easier to find angels, because there's a lot of individual angels that are under the radar, and then there's angel networks, right? And like one of the easiest ways is to obviously ask other founders, hey, so who would you recommend that I speak with? Who helped you, with your startup? Or ask a very established company that's done exceptionally well. I guarantee you everyone had to have angels to start. And just say, hey, can you give me some recommendations of angels that you liked or that you trust and that added value? And I need to go back to what you said, and I loved what you said about I've got disposable income. I know I can mentor. And this is the one thing I really also want to make sure people understand when they decide to become an angel. Yes, your money is important, but really, honestly, at the angel stage, what's more important is the mentoring, your network, the doors that you can open, perhaps an avenue, a distribution channel, or an entree into another market. And there's so much more to being an angel than the money.
Yeah.
And that's really what is really satisfying about being an angel.
It's interesting because the more I've been sitting down with startup founders on our other podcasts, the Startup Spotlights, a lot of the successful ones say exactly that when they're fundraising for the first time, it's a really difficult thing to convince someone of like, hey, give us some money.
Yes.
It's not enough. And what most of them have said that, was really interesting. I think of Chris Barton, for example, who founded Shazam. Yeah. He strategically went after angels that was interested in music recognition. And what was that? At the time, it was the chairman of the biggest record label companies, right?
Right.
Or I think of Mohit Kumar from Ultrahuman, who developed this ring, sleep tracker.
Right.
And they just sent out on Twitter to all of these people and said, who would be interested in a glucose monitor or some app like this? And they just set up a wish list. And then they looked down that wish list and found out how many of them were either really famous influencers, athletes, or angel investors. And their first group of 20 investors, I think he said, were all customers or wannabe customers of their product before the product was even created.
Right.
And so what that tells me is passion.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of investors, VCs will say, we want founders who are passionate, but actually it's the job of the startup founder, it seems, to find angel investors who would be passionate about what they're doing.
And I love that's a great example, because those are great examples, because then it means that the startup founder is proactively going after people, right, that will be the right fit as an angel, because that's the other thing. You feel free. Feel free to fire your angel. Feel free to say no to the money. There are so many examples of founders, because it's such a tiring, exhausting process, right?
Yeah.
To fundraise, you know, when someone's just finally saying, I'll write you that check, you got to really look at the individual across the table and think, but are they the right angel? Are they the right people for me? And that is one of the hardest decisions of a startup founder. When you actually have someone that's writing you the check, but then you realize they might not be the right partner.
I have heard that. The two most difficult decisions you have to make as a startup founder is, who is your co-founder?
Yes.
Like, who are you getting married to on this mission?
That's right.
And then the other marriage seems to be the investor.
Yeah.
So do you have any interesting experiences or anecdotes, Lucy, that can kind of paint this picture of how taking a check from the wrong investor might, you know, be the end of your business? Sure.
And I'm not going to go into like deep detail and names or anything, but I think I can just speak generally. Sometimes you might decide to take the check of an angel that feels they really know your business and that they can really add a lot of value, right? To the point where they suck up all the oxygen in the room, and then all of a sudden they've become your marketing person. They are giving you like all the ideas, and they've contacted Dubai Eye to get you, and like, but you're like, but that's not where we're at, or like, and they can kind of derail, right? They might push you to where you're like, but we're not aligned at all, right? So I think as an angel, you need to know when to step back. Yes, you've got an actual percentage of that individual's company, but you're not. They didn't hire you to be the CMO. They didn't hire you to be the CEO. They didn't hire you to be the CEO. And so stop doing that, right? So stop, interfering, because the last thing you want is an entrepreneur spending all of his or her time managing the angel or the VC, for that matter. I mean, good angels and good VCs. I mean, VCs are a little bit different because they're writing such a big check. Know when to just let the founder go and fly, right? So you can be too much, okay, and then that's can be very disastrous.
It's such a great point, because, it's something we reiterate on the show and hear all the time, over and over again, because so many people do get blinded by that check. They just go, I just need this capital to do what I want. And then you're painting a very clear picture of, hey, taking this money usually comes with some strings to it. Sure. There might be, whether it's something positive but draining, like a reporting procedure or governance systems when you're taking from institutional investors. Sure. Or in this case, maybe an investor that thinks they know how to run your business better than you do.
Right. And then you're butting heads all the time, right? It can get to a very bad place very quickly, right? Yeah. You can see that. And then another example, and this is now me talking to a startup founder: do not give too much of your equity away. Yeah. And oftentimes as a new startup, nobody tells you these things either, right? Because people don't talk enough about it, especially female founders. They're not talking to others about, that's a big question. How much equity should I be giving away for this amount of money? Right. And so if you give too much away initially, well, first of all, it's going to be demotivating for you later on. But also when you are further along in the development stages of your company, you're going to have less and less, right, to give others.
Right.
Where, you don't want to be left with like 10% of the company.
Yeah.
And so I think it sounds like it's a very common sense thing. But again, not necessarily when you finally got that check in your hand and they're like, but, like the investors like, or the angels like, but I want 50% of your company.
Right. Let me ask you this. What is the range? I know this is sort of like that magical question, but what is a healthy range, particularly at the angel level, that you see, that you think this is where it should be?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I'm someone that's known to be, and I pride myself on this, I'm very entrepreneur friendly. And so obviously I want a return on my money. But depending on the size of the check, and if you're the first angel group or angel in, I don't think it should be more than 5%. This is a big broad brush. I mean, someone could be giving you $2 million. Well, then, maybe you should be giving 20% or 30% because that's going to last you a long time. Right. Depending on your runway. I think it's hard to answer generally, but I'm just saying in general, if you're first money in, 5 to 10%.
Max. Yeah. I think that's a healthy, at least a litmus test.
Right.
Anyone who's asking for more than that is, you've got to really ask yourself, what are they bringing to the table? But maybe
it's like, hey, it's Erica. And I've been she is my dream angel. And for A, B, C, D, and I'm happy to give her 20. You know what I mean? Because I know she's going to stay with me. She's going to be able to open doors to VCs when I need them. And anyone would be lucky to have her as an angel. I'm more than happy to give 20%. So I think there's exceptions in every situation.
Yeah, this is the challenge, right? People always ask, like, what's the magic formula? Yeah. And there isn't a magic formula. It's like, there's 60% science to it, and it's like 40% really art, magic, a little bit of nuance and interpersonal relationship, and you just have to figure that out.
Right.
Okay. I also wanted to know from where I sit, I think you know a lot more angels than I do, but from where I sit, it seems like a lot of angels come with that investment banking background that you have. Or, of course, there's the startup founder that hit it big and they have that mentality of like, I want to support the next generation of founders. Right. Those seem to be sort of these two big groups that I see. Do you see other groupings?
Because I've been part of the ecosystem that's been helping to actively bring in women that are neither. But I'll have to say and admit that I love entrepreneurs that become angels because they totally understand the pain points and they are trying to give back. And they are some of the best angels because they've gone through the whole process, right? But C-suite executives, fabulous angels. And more of them should be angels, right? A lot of them might not have the time or they're not thinking about that. Again, back to what I was saying in the very beginning of our conversation, what more risky financial decisions should women be taking but are not? And so if you're a C-suite executive, you should be looking at becoming an angel investor, right?
I love this. Can you I want to double tap on this. So there's C-suite executives out there. I know many of them, women, men, who, the startup ecosystem is pretty sexy right now. Yeah. And they're looking at it going, gosh, maybe I should have made a different career choice. I could see this as a way for them to really not just give back and be in service to you, but actually plug into this community.
Yes.
Tell me more. Maybe they're sitting there going, gosh, I work for a big MNC and all I know is bureaucry. What do I have to share? Gosh. What can they bring to the table?
No, they could bring, the fact that they are, let's not even say sweet. I mean, anyone that is in a senior management role, I mean, they've seen so much, right? of what goes on to running a company, building a company. And startups are just a smaller microcosm of these large companies, right? And every startup wants to eventually become a big, but think about the skill sets of someone that's a CFO or CMO or CIO or COO. I mean, those are hugely transferable skills to startups. Right. They just need them on a smaller scale.
Right.
They need it all. I mean, very quickly a startup realizes, oh, crap, I really need someone to help me with my finances. That's why we're starting to get these sort of fractional CMOs, right? Because startups can't afford and fractional CFOs, right? All of the skill sets of these people in these like MNCs, right? As an example, they can totally translate that knowledge and give it back to the startup ecosystem.
So you brought up a super curious point, this idea of fractional CMOs or fractional CFOs. Are you seeing that?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, explain what that is.
Okay.
And then are you seeing that here in Dubai and in the region?
Yeah. No, so I mean, essentially it just means like, okay, say, my background is marketing. I can hang a shingle out and say that, and I know, say, my capacity is to be able to help maybe maximum 3 companies. So I'm like a consultant. Right. And so I'm going to consult like for your company and B and C's company. And it's a contract and, you know, maybe you've chosen me because I really know the FMCG space, but someone else is tapped into me because I really understand the Asia market because I lived there for 10 years and they want to, you know, bring their product there, and I've done marketing in Asia. So essentially, these 3 companies are getting my knowledge, but I'm not working for them 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And it's enough, hopefully, and you can scale that up or down, right? As you work with the individual, it's enough that hopefully I'm helping them in like a marketing capacity.
I love that.
But they don't have to pay me 100%. But me as an individual, I'm happy because I'm working with 3 different companies. I mean, this is why people do it. Right. This is why people are doing it. And I definitely am seeing more of that here. And I love it when I start seeing more people saying, I'm doing a fractional CFO
I
position.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And I hope I see a lot more of it too, because I think it's the same game as the investing game, right?
Sure.
If you invest in a certain number of companies, or if you invest your time in a certain number of companies, some of them are going to fly high and some of them might shutter.
Well, this is a good point because some of these individuals, I mean, they all operate differently. Some might say, okay, yes, I understand you're very early startup. You don't have, the revenue to pay me, but I'll take a percentage.
Right.
And that's a wonderful, right? That's that's also a way to get involved in the startup ecosystem. And hopefully, you hit it big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. Tell me, I want to get to know a little bit more of this angel group. So you've painted this picture. They're from all over. Some of them are, C-suite or leadership or management.
Sure.
Anyone with some disposable income where they want to support startups and, both strategically, hopefully, as well as cutting that check. Sure. I think a lot of angels or people who are curious about becoming an angel will say, well, how much money do I need to be able to count as an angel? Yeah.
I mean, so as an example, in North America, in the U.S., typically you would say the angel networks would say, okay, 20,000 U.S. minimum commitment per year.
Yeah.
It could be as low as 20,000 U.S. And then they have over 100, and obviously there's a lot of differences, right? There's angels that write a lot more,
right?
But that gets you in the door,
right?
And it gets you in as part of a network. It gets you into pitches, And you start slowly, right, building a portfolio. And so I really like those sort of networks where the barrier to entry is low.
Low. And what is it here? Is it similar, somewhere around 80 to 100,000 dirhams?
I'm just thinking of some of the like Dubai angel investors and so forth. I think it used to be like I think they actually also use like 20,000 US, but I haven't actually researched recently
to
see what it was.
Because you started your angel journey 10, 12 years ago?
A long time ago. And you know, at that point, the network I was part of, we started deliberately low. It was 5,000 dirhams per woman. And then we increased it when we went through different iterations of the network. But you know, and I would love to see. It's a hard thing to build an angel network because it's a lot of work. But I would like to see, and there definitely are. Let me give you an example. Actually, there is a fabulous female founder, and actually, you definitely maybe you have had her. Sophie Smith is her name, and she's the founder CEO of Nabta Health. She is a force. She is amazing. She's the reason actually that 2022 female angels exist, and I'll tell you that story later in a little while.
Wow!
But for her, when she was fundraising for Nabta Health, she deliberately set aside a tranche. I think it might have been as low as 1,000 dirhams to allow women, specifically women investors, to invest in her company. And I'll tell you another on a bigger scale now, not to say Nabta Health is not getting there. Mum's World was probably my first investment.
Wow.
So Mum's World, and Mona, she was awesome. What she did was she set aside, when she was raising a percentage for just female investors, because she understood her e-commerce site was going to be used by moms, right?
Yeah.
And that was like way back, right? Long time ago.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like, it was a novelty. And good on her that she did that. And it was a no-brainer when you know, I could still picture her telling us in the Capital Club about Mum's World and how it was going to scale, and it was going to be the e-commerce site of the Middle East. And I mean, it all came to fruition. And she said, you know, you're all in this room because I'm specifically setting aside, a tranche for just female investors. And I want you to become my ambassadors. You will become my best ambassadors.
Brilliant.
And I'm just trying to remember, I think at that time, again, I think we were able to invest as low as 25,000 US.
Wow.
Which is, and yeah, I mean, yeah.
And tell me, Lucy, like obviously you're incredibly passionate about getting more women investors on board.
Yeah.
What is that? Make that case for me. I mean, I'm a woman. I have my own reasons as to why I think that's important. But why is it so important to you?
Yeah. Well, let's just talk about, I'm going to start with the economics of it. Because, so right now, if we talk about just angel investors, only about 15% of investors are women that are angels.
Wow. 15%.
Yes. But when we look at VCs, and we look at the ones that are making the decisions, the general partners, I think that statistic is like only maybe 5 to 7% of GPs are female. Okay. So obviously they have a lot of power, the GPs, right? But again, we always wonder why we're still in 2025 and less than 2% of VC money goes to female founders. And that's because we don't have enough GPs that are females, right? You have to start somewhere, right, to feel confident eventually becoming a GP, right? So I want women to start being angels first. Then maybe they want to become an LP. And then maybe, you know, if they're young enough and if we become role models, right, for the next generation, you know, I'm hoping every time I talk about being an investor to students that some girls in the audience can see themselves running a VC in the future.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now going back to economics, it is a fact. It is a fact that if you invest in a company that has at least one female founder, they will give you a higher return back on your, say, $1. It could be as high as like 70 cents. 70 cents more on your $1 of investment if you've invested in a company that has at least one female founder versus you investing in a company that has all male.
Interesting.
So, I mean, the economics or the returns are factual, yet if you're a VC and you're an angel or whatever, why then, if it's factual, why are we not investing in companies that have at least one female founder? Why? So,
can I question you on this?
Yes, go ahead.
Because yeah, I agree, and especially in Silicon Valley, there were a lot more female. You just could see that there was clearly more female founders, and they weren't getting invested in as much. Yeah. Over here, I would say that's true, right? There's more female founders that exist than are getting funded. Yeah. But I also have this question of what about the behavior of women? And I
Do
come
you
back
mean the startup founder?
The founder.
Okay,
because I remember there was this wonderful negotiations course at Stanford. Professor Maggie Neal, she was such a ball buster, and she just pushed all women to negotiate every deal.
That's awesome.
And there were all these studies that came out that said, 9 out of 10 men, if they see a job posting where they don't qualify, like the minimum requirements, they don't meet 9 out of 10 of them, they will still put up their hand and say, I want the job.
Sure.
A woman who would read that and go, wow, these are all the minimum requirements. I have 9 of them, but I don't have the 10th one.
Yeah.
Right? So they're more qualified than the guy I just talked about.
Yeah.
They will not put up their hand because it says minimum requirement. Women are trained to be more rule followers in that sense. And so they are opting themselves out.
Yeah.
And so I have this question of, is it that women are opting themselves out more in this region or around the world? Or is it that there are not enough women VCs that would fund? Because I would assume that men would also fund women if they came with a great business idea in front of them.
Okay, so I think it's dual. I think it's
yes and
both, right?
Yeah, because
this whole thing of fake it till you make it for the men, imposter syndrome for women. There's so many layers as to why this happens. Are women opting out? I'm thinking when they hear podcasts like yours and they're like, I see women putting themselves out there. I know, I'm seeing them doing it. Okay, even if they're like, it's so uncomfortable and so tough, they know they have to do it. They know they have to learn the jargon. They have to. So I think there's still more than enough women putting themselves out there in this region. We just do not have enough money to go around. We need more of everything. We need more angels. We need more VCs. We just do not have enough money for the amount of innovation that's coming out. Okay, but for women, not feeling confident enough, I think that's a real thing. So that's a whole other percentage, perhaps, of women that are not, asking for a larger check. I'm always actually telling female founders they should ask for a larger check because that runway is really short. And you do not want to go out and fundraise again a year from now when you know how hard it's been.
Right.
So ask for like a bigger check. So it's like strategy kind of.
Yeah.
And
are you finding that when you onboard and you're seeing more female angels come on board, are they driving more funds to women? Is this part of their mandate? Like, obviously, I'm trying to think of it for myself. Do I prioritize women. I would love to.
Right. Sure,
but of course, it comes down to like, how excited am I by the startup idea and all of that
it has
stuff.
to make sense. It has to resonate with you, and it has to be a fundable idea, right? You're not just giving out your money because it's a female founder.
Yeah.
And so I think that we need to make that very clear. And not every female founder is going to resonate with you. And I mean, I invest in male startups too.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, a lot of my focus is on female founders.
So searching and finding female founders,
or
and
they just come
them.
to me, right? Because again, there's just not enough of us, and I'm like, how come? There's just not enough people saying, "Hey, I'm open to like hearing your pitch. I'm open to like investing in companies that have at least one female founder." But we do need to have more men doing the same, because they're still the ones writing the bigger checks, right? They're still the ones that are traditionally like GPs and VCs.
Yeah.
So we need to bring them, on side.
Yeah. Understood.
And that's happening. I mean, there's definitely men that are like, oh yeah, no, I totally get it.
Yeah. And I'm curious for you. So you're someone who's obviously going out there trying to support women, funding women, startup ideas that resonate with you. What percentage of your portfolio of startups have female founders on them?
I think a huge, I'll tell you that 3 of the funds that I'm an LP in all have a gender lens, meaning that they invest in companies that have at least one female founder. And so, like for instance, PAC VC, which is an awesome VC run by 3 amazing women in the UK, their lens is betterment, access, and climate. And they're very clear, do you fit into one or any or all of those buckets? And they've put together an amazing portfolio. So I'm really proud to be like an LP.
Just off the top of my head, as I think of the female investors that I know, institutional investors, a lot of them are actually more impact investing focused or thematically focused.
Yeah.
Are you finding that as well, that there's this social lens that women investors are applying?
So the thing that's interesting, when I started to become an angel, it wasn't like I was intentionally impact focused. But one thing that's also interesting about investing in female founders is that typically their company has some sort of an impact, right? More than the return, right? The revenue return. So I always say, though, that we have to be mindful that impact and making money are not mutually exclusive. Absolutely. So just because I'm a female founder and I put together this fabulous edutech product to teach Arabic better doesn't mean that I'm not making a lot of money from it also.
Right.
So there is a huge impact in that I'm helping the next generation learn Arabic and learn and have fun doing it and leveling it up in schools in MENA. But it's also a company that makes a lot of money. Yeah. So I realized that without even consciously trying to invest in companies that make an impact, honestly, just by investing in female founders, you will typically find that there is an impact. There is an impact related to their company. They're solving for a pain point.
Yeah, I really love that, because the more I sit down with startup founders, a lot of them have been men that I've been interviewing, but many of them say, at the end of the day, you have to have a why and you have to have a purpose.
Yes.
And as I'm thinking about that, some men are just building businesses that they hope are successful, which is an interesting, ambition and a lever, and nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But at the end of the day, when going gets tough, they all say you have to have a much bigger purpose than that.
That's
and
right.
As you're reflecting this on me, I'm realizing if your business, like the mission of the business, can also be that sense of purpose versus, I'm trying to create a better life for my family, or, a lot of the men have purposes outside of the business.
Yes.
That's what I'm noticing.
Right.
While I'm noticing a lot of women will have a purpose that's embedded in the business. And these are 2 different things.
So I want to really make this point. I love that you brought this up. I want to make the point that, getting like outside money is not the end all and be all. And honestly, if you don't need someone else's money, do not even go down that route. It's a hard route. So what happens if you're told that you're not investable, right? It does not mean that you will not get funding elsewhere. Right? It just means you are not like this like precise fit for this VC's like, right? They just are very linear and like you just happen to not fit that particular VC's like their mandate or any of these. But so what are your options when you're told that? One is then you're like, I'm going on it. I'm going on my own path. I'm happy making an impact. I'm happy making revenues, for whatever. I'm happy that there's a sustainability aspect. There's so many companies that do so well, but have never had VC, right? Funding. Craigslist. I'm going to name the big ones. Patagonia, right? Spanx. I mean, they never have had, right, and never needed, but still did really well. The second option is then to pivot and to say, okay, what can I do to make sure my margins then are big enough for a VC to take notice? Can I start in a bigger market in another country? Then that would give that make that addressable market all that much more appealing to a VC. So then play that game, right?
Yeah.
So either step away or then like pivot.
Yeah. What's interesting is so VCs and a lot of startups still need to understand this. VCs are really looking for that $1 billion potential business, right? They really are. So if you can't paint a picture that is realistic of your startup becoming $1 billion valuation, which is a crazy large number. I'm curious, is there a number like that for angels where angels are looking at it going, well, as long as it makes 100 million revenue or 10 million revenue?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I read a great article just recently and I had to laugh because this was never my lens. And maybe I should have. But this one article said that angels are ideally, and I told you about the 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
They're ideally looking for that one that makes 100 times return. And I was like, well, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that just be fabulous? And I'm sure there are angels that are looking for that 100 like times return and have made that 100 times return. I'm honestly, I'm happy with a 5x. I'm happy with a 5x, 10x. I think it's also a function of how it's getting much better now in the region, but a lot of our ecosystem was very nascent, right? And so we're not like a Silicon Valley. Where you have these crazy multiples. And, we might eventually get there. But I think also, again, as angels, we need I'm not saying be a charity. Yeah. I'm just saying let's just be a bit realistic in like what we want for a return.
So Lucy, we're looking at, the title of this podcast is the perfect pitch. Right. And we look at what makes a perfect pitch. I'm curious to you personally, when you think about all of the pitch decks you've seen, all of the pitches you've sat in, what makes a perfect pitch to you?
Okay. And I'm sure you've heard the same thing from all your like fabulous guests. Obviously, it's a founding team. I'll elaborate a little bit more. Founding team, ideally, depending on the stage of their business, do they have an MVP, or do they have MOUs? Or if they don't have an MVP, do they have an MOUs that say, someone outside in their market believes in them, and like what is their go-to-market strategy?
Okay. Let me ask you about this, because a lot of people say, okay, you're not ready for a VC. You have no traction. You definitely don't have a minimum viable product yet.
Right.
But maybe you should go to some angels. And so they're still at this ideation pre-seed stage. Sure. Is it still possible to get angels to jump on board at that stage? Is it common? Or now with the market sort of, transitioning as it has been, VCs are saying now, if you don't have traction, we won't even look at you. Are angels also moving in that direction where they're saying, hey, you've got to have something to show us, not just an idea?
Yeah, no, I think it really depends on how early, like even angels, like individual angels, angel groups, they even have what they like what their
investment criteria is.
Yeah, so it might be very possible that that some angel groups are like we want it to be a little bit more than just like seed, right?
Yeah.
Or others are like, okay, we're fine with pre-seed, but we need to know that they're going to scale up pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to say, like, talking to you, okay, black and white. Yeah. It's so dependent on these factors. Like, this founder is talking to me, they're pre-seed, but I can see it's going to work. Like, I just know because of all the other pitches or all the years of experience, I just know they're going to make it work.
Right.
And they don't quite have an MVP yet, but I believe in them.
Interesting.
I don't think that's really helped Erica, but... but right, I mean, it goes back to what you said. It's like part of it is intuition too, right?
Yeah, interesting. So first part you said was founding team. I'm curious, as you think back on all of the founders that were really successful for you, what's that magic je ne sais quoi that you're looking for in them?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, they have to be respectful of each other, and they have to be able to play nice. Right? There have been situations, and I talked earlier about kicking out your angel, but also if you don't have the right co-founder, and this is something more that women tend to do more than men, they just kind of hope that the founder relationship gets better, and they hope, and a year passes, and then another year passes, and that's like a death knell, right, for a company. If you can see and that you really should have broken up like a year ago, but you just hoped it was going to get better. And so that can really be quite disastrous. I mean, I've invested in companies where, the CEO situation has imploded, but people kind of held on, because it was that person's idea, and they were the brains behind the technology. Wow. But they were a car crash, waiting to happen. But nobody wanted to say otherwise, that this person needed to be removed. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of people in that situation probably don't think that that's a possibility. Like, they don't even know that you can exchange out co-founders.
Sure. I mean, this is like, this is a business, right? And you might have to buy out your co-founder, right? Depends on your agreement with that co-founder.
Right.
You might have to say, okay, I'm going to give you some money, and I want you to exit the business, and hopefully it's done amicably. Mm-hmm. And the two people are mature adults, and if there's just two, and that they can make it work that way. But that is another situation that, and as an investor, you ideally, that's also part of maybe the mentoring, the value that you can add. Hopefully you didn't invest in a company where you could see that happening, but if you are in a situation, you invested in a company where you could see that happening, you need to speak up.
It's interesting. Yeah, I hear that it's more common than we're thought to believe. Right. It's kind of like the world's divorce rate.
Yes, that is so true, right? And it is a very intimate relationship, and it doesn't always, and it's full of stress, right? And and companies change.
Yeah.
And individuals don't always change with, the company at the same time, or it's very possible that it can be equally passionate, but just don't see eye to eye on the direction anymore.
Interesting. What do you consider like a really big pet peeve at the moment when startup founders are reaching out to you and asking for funding? What advice do you have for them to be like, do not do this anymore?
Right. No, and I have to admit, I like to be available, but I honest to goodness, do not have enough hours in the day. So I actually end up feeling incredibly guilty that I cannot... I cannot mentor. I cannot have coffee meetings with everyone that asks. And so cold reach outs are difficult. But even if someone said, blah, 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 said to contact you, I just do not have the capacity, like, to go and meet everyone. So I guess, I actually end up saying to people, like, maybe you could just like leave me like a voice message on what specifically do you want me to help you with? Like, just ask me 3 questions. If I know the answer, and this is always what I say, if I know the answer, I will tell you. If I don't know the answer, I will also tell you. That's just ask me 3 things. That's probably all that I can do. What can I help you? What are the 3 things I can help you with?
I love it. So there's advice in there for warm intros, and I've heard that a lot from VCs.
Sure.
And it's this game we have to play to network in.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that, the warm intro. There was a fabulous, smart as anything, female founder, a really young female founder, and a Stanford grad. But she was like, but Lucy, okay, so, but if I was not part of the incubator or this club or that club at school, and I wasn't with, like, I didn't know, like, I don't know any VCs, or I don't know any angels, and how do I even get a foot in? Like, where do warm intros come from? Right? And nobody tells you, how do you cultivate? Like, she's right. If I'm an outsider looking in, right, because she's not part of the boys club, right? If I'm an outsider looking in, where do I even start? And I love that, because then I was like, okay, then we need to do something for women that are feeling like that. And a lot of women feel like that. I mean, she's a Stanford grad. You think automatically she's plugged in. No. Right? Because even within that circle, there are microcosms of, like, other communities, right?
Absolutely.
And so so very quickly, there is unconscious bias, like, in investing. But if I mentioned earlier, like, okay, so all the GPs are guys. So where do they get their intros from? Other guys, right? So they just happen to, they're not consciously they're just not getting the female deal flow.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're just talking to other guys.
Right.
So it's not always intentional. They're excluding, female founders. So for this female founder, though, I realized that, and actually she asked even a better question. She was like, how do I even get the media interviews? Where do I start getting media interviews? Because she knew that if she was able to amplify her brand, and maybe herself, that it would be easier. Because that can be kind of like a warm intro. If they've heard, like, Lucy's, like, startup on your podcast, they're like, oh, yeah, I remember her because she talked about her company on this podcast. It really helps. And I love that she led with, how do I get media interviews?
Interesting.
Right?
I would love to know that, actually. How do you get media interviews?
You need to start working your network.
Yeah,
and I think
it's a full strategy.
I love podcasts because podcasts have democratized, right, the ability for people that maybe don't have a whole PR, a team behind them to have their voices heard.
Yeah.
There is, I guarantee you, a podcast for everyone. out there. Meaning, if I'm a startup founder of this or that or this kind of sector, there are more than one. There's more than one podcast that would take me on, right?
Absolutely.
As an interviewee.
Absolutely.
And I think they should start with that. And then they need to definitely work on social media. That includes everything from LinkedIn to writing articles, right? Submitting those, working on their Instagram. It's a
full
job.
project. Yeah, it's a full job.
But I loved that she understood it makes a big difference and then eventually maybe you get the magazine interviews, then you get the radio interviews, and TV interviews.
I love that. That is the first time I've heard that on this, ever actually.
Okay,
the media strategy is so important.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm the first one to say that because I really do know and I really believe it's very important. Yeah. And, I better also mention, I know sometimes we're disparaging of awards, and and nobody wants and acknowledges that paid awards are a good thing. No, it's not. Or that paid coverage is a good thing. It's not. But I do love awards because that's another way of getting yourself and your company and brand out there. So again, there are many, many awards. Legitimate awards all around the world, and a lot of them focus on women. Yeah. So take a look and see where, you might fit in.
I love that. Beautiful. As we come to a close, Lucy, I'm curious, you've been around this neck of the woods here in the Middle East and Africa for the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
What's been most exciting for you, specifically around the startup investing landscape and just the startup landscape in general, the changes that you've seen and where you think it's going?
Well, I love the fact that you brought up Africa, right? We are right on the cusp of where Africa is. Africa, honestly, that is... already for many people, the investors that know that's where we're going to see a lot of the innovation and entrepreneurs coming from, right? So that there's an acknowledgement, and there's a lot of work being done within the different African countries to really amplify their entrepreneurs, and a lot of them come through here, which I love also. So we get access that way. So I think the geographies, and I think I've always been excited to be in MENA, but we're really fortunate to be right where we are. So Africa, I'm also really excited about young entrepreneurs, right? Because now we're normalizing a bit better that you can start being an entrepreneur young. And you can fail young. That gives you a lot more time to become a successful entrepreneur. So I think we're normalizing that you don't have to be like gray hair, and have had 10 jobs before you jump into becoming an entrepreneur. I like the fact that there is the risk taking early on, and then the fact is that you do need to fail a few times to do well. Yeah. So I'm starting to see younger entrepreneurs. So the next generation, and then different geographies that we can tap into.
I love that. Yeah, I'm noticing that here too, that there are, there's always been hungry people in Dubai. It's been a hustler city. Yeah. But more and more now, you can see that there's this strategic thinking and this risk taking, and this ability to fail and speak out about them. Because I think the Asian culture, which we're closer to here, tends to try and shovel your failures underneath the rug and hide them away. One of the qualities that make startup ecosystems so strong, the Silicon Valley mantra is to fail early and fail often. Yes. So that you can stop failing later down the road.
No, that's so true. And I always say that some of the most valuable mentors are ones that have gone through that entire process and maybe numerous times. And in order for us to build a really strong ecosystem, we need strong mentors like that, mentors that have failed and can talk about it, and are comfortable talking about it. But again, because we're such a new ecosystem, we don't have a lot that have failed. So it's kind of strange to say, I want to see more, more founders that fail and then they become like deep mentors in the ecosystem.
I love that. Before we sign off, Lucy, I also want to ask you, do you have an area of passion? I mean, obviously you want to support women founders, but do you have sectors or some ideas or investment thesis that you're working off of right now that you're like, I really want to invest more in this space?
Yeah, I've recently, interestingly, have been talking a lot lately, like on panels, about climate tech. Education is always something I'm always really passionate about. So edutech is always something. But I have to admit, I think I'm quite diverse in my areas of interest. Esports and gaming is something that I'm also very focused on right now. But I would say, like climate tech, esports gaming, but there's evergreen sectors like education, fintech that I would always go back to.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. So hopefully we can curtail the number of people that are reaching out to you, but that they can be a bit more specific.
Right. There you go.
Lucy, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I really love the nuance of our conversation. And I think it's really important that we can speak into those layers that differentiate angel investing from this institutional investing landscape. And I think that'll be very helpful to a lot of founders out there.
Yeah. And thanks for having me as your first angel. I look forward to hearing and learning from others. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Erica.
Thank you.
Hey there. Thanks for joining this conversation. If you enjoyed that episode and you want to start researching potential investors for your startup's fundraising strategy, go to lucidityinsights.com and sign up now to the startup registration package by clicking the plans button on the top right corner. We look forward to having you join our future conversations and checking out our additional content. Until next time, stay hungry and stay humble.